All right, on today's episode of the Media Show, we are going to talk about business cards, technology of business cards. I know everybody's going to be interested in that. And a little company, nothing too major, a little company called Google with Professor Beth Egan. This is the Media Show. All right. We are here. We are back. It is Craig and Professor Beth Egan here for you on the Media Show. And we are going to be discussing a couple of big topics, I think, Beth. And I just wanted to start out, wanted to get off on the really big topic, which is, as you know, coming off our last episode, we had a pretty lively chat about the implications of free email, which of course started out with our good friends here at Google with Gmail. But to me, that this pales in comparison. And I just wanted to start off by saying that, as you know, and I don't know, I know that you're now a relaxed professor living up in the lush life. I don't know where do you have sleeves on? Like what's the deal? Like a professor. I'm in the working world. All right. I'm still going to trade shows. So I go to multiple trade shows, and I think you're going to find this fascinating because I found it fascinating. And of course, I go to our industry trade shows, the ad weeks and blah, 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 all that stuff. And, I'll be the first to admit it, BE. I'm older. I'm not the young guy anymore. I'm not the 24-year-old Craig running around with Mature Outlook magazine with my media kit running around. I'm on in years. But I go to these events and I still carry a business card. And it's kind of weird because now you kind of like take your phone and you sandwich them together, or you take pictures and the app is set up and all that stuff. And my business cards kind of just sat in my bag. So the last year or so, they've kind of gone. I've got like 3, 10, 15 left in my bag. A lot of them with bank corners. I don't even know. I go to a trade show a couple of weeks ago now. Fly into Las Vegas. This is a big industry. I arrive and I'm hit with instantly people asking me for my business card, which I found fascinating because every trade show I've been at, right, until I get to the International Franchise Show, right, I'm like, Craig, you don't have a digital thing, like some digital tech that I'm mashing my phone or doing some photograph, whatever. And now, at one point, I walk into a booth. There were 15 people in the booth, 15 business cards. That was it. I was out, sold out. So I went to a trade show this week, and I was so afraid that I was going to end up back in this. I printed more business cards.
How many?
Where do you stand on business cards, Professor Beth Egan?
That is hilarious. So even though I'm a professor, I do still have the good fortune of being able to go to some industry conferences. I was at the Interactive Advertising Bureau's annual leadership meeting.
Ooh, throw some names around. Throw the heavyweight. There you go. I don't go to any leadership conferences over here. Mine are rubber chicken.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Pre-packaged sandwiches in a box. Like, go sit outside, Craig. Don't worry. The leadership people are in the other room. They're having they've sniffed the brandy sniffers. I get it. Exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
And cigars. And so, yeah, like I'm a little over 10 years out from the business. So I'm starting to get a little imposter syndrome. I'm just a professor now. And I was shocked when I went to bump my phone, how many people were like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're the digital people. How is this news to you?
You're kidding.
So I felt very ahead of the curve.
Wow, you were the top end of the tech in the leadership area. That's fantastic.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I felt so weird at Ad Week New York because I think I gave somebody a business card and they kind of looked at me. They were like 26 years old and they were in their 30s and they were like, "Oh, business card? I don't know." Like, what? I can't believe it. Where'd you get here on your, in your Flintstones mobile? Like, I was like, oh, all right. Like, sorry, I have a business card, all right. Anyway.
I have a theory on that though.
Okay.
And I'm seeing this in a lot of other places. Like if you're sort of digging into some trend watching, nostalgia is big. And I think it harkens back to sort of post-COVID and our desire to be more in real life, if you will. I've been saying for years, and I'm seeing little glimpses of this. I think magazines are going to make a comeback, and
Ooh, don't, how dare you?
I think the business cards might
You think
be.
Model Railroader is rolling right back onto the shelves next to People,
Well,
huh? This
well,
is it.
not
We're coming back.
not all of them, but my good friend's freshman in college daughter, her on her Christmas
Mhm.
list this year was a subscription to People magazine. And as someone who has spent millions of dollars in People magazine over my lifetime, it warmed my heart to know that an 18-year-old wanted to hold that magazine in her hand. So I'm hopeful, and I think
See
the
that
business
Beth
cards.
Beth right there is hurting my feelings because she said she spent millions of dollars in People, knowing I never worked at People. And I
Yeah,
know that there was a saying in our business for all you young folks who are listening in. I assume you're all Beth students. You'd be stupid not to listen to this podcast. And you can't get fired. At the time, there was a saying you can never get fired for buying People. So,
that's right.
when Beth tells you about how she went to the Super Bowl, whatever, I'll just let you know that me, no. Craig, oh, forget him. Don't worry about him. He'll get his page from his golf guy. Whatever, it's fine. Anyway, I think I do
Well,
think you're
the
right.
pages in your golf guide were a lot less expensive than pages in People
That's
magazine.
true. That's true. I did. Well, I actually have a couple of notes on that. Like there is some interest in that space. There's a couple of businesses that are kind of or digital businesses kind of building in, and we actually might have a guest to talk to in that zone. As I do think you're right. I think that people probably are yearning for it. It was asked in my very household to get a subscription to a thought leader magazine recently, which I did like a double take, and so I'm excited about that. So
I'm
yeah,
assuming it
we're
wasn't
in.
your wife.
No, it was,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it was the boss. Yeah, the real boss said, "Hey, get me a subscription to this." I said, "Okay, you got it. I'm on it." Do you want me to get you the one with the tote bag, the whole subscription, or do you want the digital one? He wants the tote bag, the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. So speaking of the whole thing, you and I follow your LinkedIn, and we've had some conversations already, as mentioned before. And I know that, look, it's not a black and white thing. Yes, people are going to feel like I'm the good guy. And yes, you're the evil professor after this conversation is over. But long story short is we are going to talk about the Google, the big giant Google machine, the world of Google itself. And in doing a little bit of research, not going too deep, although you might remember from some previous conversations that I had read some of the transcripts. I think there's some really great reporting on certainly the both antitrust cases. I think if you're not aware, if you're listening to the pod here with us at there's actually there were two big antitrust cases, one related to Google's control of search, and then the other antitrust case, which is more about the ad tech side of it and their control of essentially what would be the end to end of publishing and other areas of advertising that didn't relate directly to search, although they're connected. In that, and in both those cases, and I paid more attention to the second one only because that's more germane to what I did in my career as a publisher and an owner of a network, and then being still in the business day to day. And there was some really incredible reporting. There were some great people in our industry who were not just following the antitrust case, but they were digging their heels in, really giving some strong opinions. Even some of the folks that, that that testified, there's just been a lot of stuff online. And I think it's a fascinating, component. I don't think we have enough time, in a single podcast to talk about Google and what's been going on. But I do think that, when we title this Google versus everyone, we're talking strictly about, in my mind, right, those two cases. Because as we talked even before the pod started, I don't think it's all evil, and I think it's like, that would be like saying like, oh, that whole country is evil. I don't believe everybody in a country is evil. And what's amazing about that is I did want you to know, just on my freehand research, Google Google's scale of, in terms of GDP, would put it firmly inside of the G20 of nations on itself. Apple, its neighbor, they would be in the G7. So just to give you a perspective of the
That's a
scale of
great,
these,
yeah, that's a
yeah,
great
yeah,
analogy. Love it.
of these businesses. Yeah, I mean, Google right there, I think right next to Switzerland and Saudi Arabia, in terms of size. And again, I mean, you and I talk fondly about my initial kind of run in with Gmail, which is kind of, many of us who, may or may not have used Yahoo originally at search. Um, my real kind of Google crash course was when I got my invite. I'm one of those people. I'm old enough to have my real name with a period in between it and the Gmail in the end. I don't have some number next to it. But yeah, like that's, that's where Google started, for me. But in this case, we're talking about some stuff that I think is, and I have some opinions on this, going back to my earliest days with my then business partner, kind of making decisions to pretty much not work with Google, even when we had the chance. Now, we ultimately did, we had to, in video, but in the, in the spirit of, a conversation with Professor Egan, I love that you are taking the stand of, hey, this is not an evil business, right? We need these cookies and pixels to make life convenient and I get that. And I wanted to just throw that out there to say, hey, yeah, I get it. We do want to have that. I am not one of these folks who's like, oh, well, I want everything to be, wide open and no tracking, nothing like that. I actually see the point in that. And I know you do. And I know you recently had a post about it. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of say like, hey, here's my position on Google.
Yeah, so the post you're referring to, I believe, is there was a Wall Street Journal article the other day about how it was exposed that the NFL has been collecting attendee information. If you go to a football game, that they're capturing your geolocation data and selling it to advertisers. And there was a quote in there. I'm not going to get the quote right. You can go to my LinkedIn and find it. But it was something along the lines of the problem with collecting geolocation data is that it is something along the lines of identifying an individual. And I saw that as a perfect encapsulation of the erroneous information being, or the erroneous conversations that are happening about this very issue. And that is, if I walk into MetLife Stadium for a Jets game, because I'm married poorly and my husband is a Jets fan.
Don't say that.
Well,
Come on.
He'll never listen to this, so it's fine.
You're talking to a long-standing Knicks fan. I'm struggling myself. It's been a very day. I understand. I have solidarity.
Hey, I'm a Bills fan, so it doesn't get worse than that.
All right.
If I walk into MetLife Stadium with this thing in my hand, which I will have in my hand, sure, the Jets can know that this device is there. And the Jets can decide, God knows if they're in MetLife Stadium for a Jets game, they must be a Jets fan, because why else would you do that?
Fair
And
point. Fair point. Well, you could be a Patriots fan. I've been there for a Patriots game. It felt a little Patriot heavy, but whatever. I don't go often. No offense, my Jets friends. Love you all.
Fair, fair. But why does the NFL want that information? What are they going to do with that information? They're going to send me a message for a Jets jersey. There may be an advertiser, maybe it's a local car dealer who wants to send Jets fans an ad that appeals to them as a Jets fan versus a Giants fan. And they're going to send a different ad to the people who they've identified were in MetLife Stadium during the Giants game. For those of you who don't know, Jets and the Giants play in the same stadium. Kind of crazy, but they do. Now, if I'm said local car dealer, let's say, I don't know that I am sending that ad to Beth Egan. I have no idea who that person is. I don't really care who that person is. If I've sent that ad to the right person at the right time with the right message, and I decide to engage with that ad and go test drive that car, then they know who I am. Then they care who I am. But geolocation data is not providing a single advertiser with information about an individual as a human. It's information about what device was in that stadium on a particular day.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you lead into, and I know, man, we probably need to serve dinner, and then we'd need a bar break. I mean, this podcast could be I could open up Pandora's box. I mean, I tell people what I do for a living, and then it's like, well, Craig, Alexa's spying on me, and I know this because, and I'm like, well, are you sure you didn't, kind of look at that car ad once, in the last couple of weeks, and then maybe they got, it's difficult, right, to talk about. I understand what you're saying 1,000%. My bones to pick with Google don't really, and I read the article, and obviously I made it clear that we had to talk about this, on a podcast and continue the Gmail conversation, where this is where this kind of thrust in for me, right? Like, Gmail, it's for free, right? You get all this space. I think you and I go back, I think it was 100 times more space than whatever AOL was giving you at the time. And even to catch up, Yahoo and AOL couldn't even get within, 10 times of the space that Google was giving you. And that was huge back then. Right. And now of course we are paying for it right now. Now, if you have a business account, you're actually paying, pretty decent chunk of money now to run a business account through Google with any type of real space on it. But back then you made a deal, right? You didn't know it. Your friend, my friend, Ken, who told, oh, you got an invite to Google, you sign up. You're kind of positioned as, oh, it's free. Well, not really. Right. And you kind of learn that very instantly when you start sending an email to your brother about, hey, we should get together, over the Christmas holiday and maybe go to Florida. And then all of a sudden you start getting ads on, for the following 9 months later, when you're going to be in Florida, on Christmas, you should go to, the Universal Studios or whatever. And you're like, oh, that was kind of your first foray into it. But modern times, and this is something that I'm curious only because I'm exposed to a few young people, right? I mean, my kids are both still playing basketball, and I got a 16-year-old and whatever else. But I look at your students as a really great kind of litmus test for this is how much is too much? How far are we willing to go? Are you okay with walking into a stadium and getting an ad or even a phone takeover that says, hey, come get your Jets jersey right now, and we're going to give you, $15 off, or, on the 4th floor of the stadium, there's a pretzel guy, whatever, like, I don't know what the offers would be. To your point, could be an auto dealership. But what's too far? right? And where's the line? Because I know the line, right, would be, and I don't have a device in my house to be fair, where I can speak to it. I don't have Alexa. I don't have Siri in the house as a product that can hear me and then do whatever I want. But in this case, short of recording, what's the line? Like I don't know where I don't know where the line is, I think. And that's what the podcast really is meant to kind of discover. I want to talk to people who know. I know you do as well. And I know you have a lot of people who know, and to see really what are the rules. What is PII at this point, and where are we? I know some states, I have called on the medical side of this, medical data, with HIPAA compliance. I mean, you go right over the border from where you are into Canada, and the rules are totally different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I think we want to discover here. And I think that as we bring guests on, we're going to talk about it. We're going to get deep in. But in your opinion, like, you're okay. So every time I've, the TED Talks and everything, you're okay with it, right? Like you're all right with the convenience of it.
Yeah. For the most part, I am. But, to be clear, my message is make informed decisions, not give it all away, but make informed decisions. I say to my students, turn off your period trackers. Get a notebook and write it down. That is information that I don't think the cloud needs to know. Because especially, since the end of Roe v. Wade, that is information that can get weaponized against you. So there are things that I do think you need to be very careful about. I have my Google location turned off. Although I use Waze, or if you use Waze and Google Maps, you can turn your location off all day long. They still know where you are. But that is a trade-off I'm willing to make. I want Waze to tell me where I can avoid the traffic. So I'm willing to make that trade-off. I think I have a couple of thoughts in terms of your question on where the line is. And this actually did come up in my class just a week or so ago. And we've been talking about this for a number of years. So I think it's almost time to go out and test out the hypothesis now. But what I'm hearing from students today is, they are digital natives, so they don't know a world when they weren't tracked. So they just assume it, and they've grown up adjusting to that. But the other thing is they just don't care. Now the hypothesis I think we need to go check is, for years we've been saying because the millennials didn't care either. And they weren't necessarily digital natives. For years we've been saying they don't care because they don't have incomes, they don't have families, they don't have all this other stuff to protect. So as they get older, they will care more. But that's not what I'm hearing from them. What I'm hearing from them is we're aware and we're acting accordingly. The other thought I had on this, and this actually happened just as I was trying to log on.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah.
When you brought up the hardware side of this, I don't know how often you do that. Do they know that they can go into their devices and turn all this stuff off? I mean, like, in other words, like, I'm going to turn off, like, so I did it. I remember 2 years ago, I don't know what triggered me. It was something, it might've been something you said. I have no idea. I go in and I turn it ruined my life. I needed all that. I needed all that. I needed the thing to pull all that stuff back. So I'm just curious about the young people. Are they sitting there going, yeah, I could turn it off, but then I'm not going to get my dinner tonight delivered without having to punch in my coordinates and my address. I just want to sit here and keep doing what I'm doing, right? There's a convenience level to this that I think is the trade-off. It's like, where am I going to, what am I going to give up? Like, do I shut everything down, or do I go app by app and pick, and then realize oh man, I got to go turn that app back on because it doesn't work without the location tracking properly. Like that would be a hardware thing. And do you think that this part of the solve is this kind of, I'm not saying like a driver's license. I'm not going that far, but like should AT&T or should Verizon, let's say at the carrier level or the device level, preempt this better than what they're doing now, or would even matter? Like I just got a brand new iPhone 2 weeks ago. I didn't even look, to tell you the truth. I just pointed the thing to the other one, to the old one. It did its, dance. It got everything across, and I assume everything works until it does, until I have to plug in a password. And that's how
Mhm.
I live my dumb digital life. I mean, is this what the kids are doing, right? Or are they just so much more unforgiving or forgiving? Like, in other words, have they just given up, or are they like, no, Craig's a fool. He should actually be doing this, this, and this, right? I've not asked my 16-year-old about this, by the way.
Yeah, I would love you to, because I would love to know his response. I think they know how, or I think they know they can. And by the way, I don't think they're all that different than you and me and all of our age cohort. I think people are aware. I think we're lazy. Uh,
Mm,
I mean, just think about the accept all cookies button. I don't have the stats on that. If somebody does, pop it into the comments here. Um, but I'm pretty sure the vast majority of people just accept all cookies because you're there to do something. You want to get, your work done, your shopping done, whatever task you've come to
I'm in
uh,
that group.
the World Wide Web for. So you just hit accept all cookies. Hit.
I actually have here. I actually have regrets. Occasionally, that thing will pop up on the device, and I'll hit the don't accept, and then I'm like, oh no, does that
uh,
mean I'm not going to get what I want out of it? I'm that type of dummy.
Yeah,
But go
yeah,
ahead.
and it might, but, I encourage, if you're listening to this, next time, click manage cookies, because I think most sites have gotten really, really good at explaining to you what the cookie is doing. Some of those cookies are just there for the basic functioning of that website, and to your point, if you decline it, then all of a sudden something's broken and you can't get to what you
Mm,
want. And then there's an opportunity. They are clear that they're sharing information with advertisers. And if for whatever reason you don't want to do that, then unclick it. But we're lazy because it's just easier. It's convenient. And so, we take the path of least resistance and hope nothing goes awry. But the other point, which kind of plays into this, the other point that I wanted to make, and this
mm,
happened just as I was trying to log in for this recording. I'm a Apple person, so I've defaulted to Safari most of my life, or most of the time that Safari's been a part of my life.
right.
Um, and I mentioned this in my TED Talk too. We've all encountered that issue with Safari where this browser doesn't support XYZ, or it's just not working as well. That is happening because of Apple's privacy first, which we've discussed is somewhat of a misnomer. That's another podcast.
Hmm.
Um, but the their privacy first approach has put guardrails on the cookies. And that is why sometimes things don't work on the Safari browser,
Right. Yeah.
because the basic functioning is gone. So I had to go and open up my Chrome browser just to have this podcast. So that's just a slight glimpse into what does the internet look like if we decline all cookies.
Yeah, I would not want to be in. I tried it. I tried it for, I want to say I was going to do it for 2 weeks. I think it lasted for 3 days, and it was
I'm
a
surprised it
nightmare,
was 3.
right? It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was not, I think if you really dig into it, if anybody does it or has tried this, please again leave a comment, let me know. But I'm a big YouTube watcher, right? Like I'm the guy who, when my son comes to me, it's, oh, Dad, I want help with this or that. I'm like, first, it used to be like my dad would be like, hey, go grab the encyclopedia, read the 10, the two paragraphs, and then come back. And now I can be like, hey, go watch 3 or 4, and I can recommend 3 or 4 videos here on this topic. And I watch a lot of YouTube, right? And I'm one of those people, I think must have been an early adopter where I was just projecting my YouTube up onto my big screen. I watched my
Mhm.
automotive review shows, my bike shows, my history shows, all that stuff. Okay. So, but the thing is, when I turned all of that off and when I changed my account, I went so far as to change my account name just to
Mm.
see how it would work. And it was a disaster. Like
Mm.
I wasn't getting anywhere I wanted to be. I've never tried this with Safari. And the thing that's funny about you mentioning Safari is, and this is how you know if you're an ad agency person that advertising works, well, at least on a dummy like me, is I see those ads now for Safari works better on
Mm.
your iPhone because it saves you battery life. And I just think and my whole life is battery life. I don't even have an electric car and I'm worried about my battery life. And I'm leaning towards like, well, maybe I should switch because I want that extra 25 minutes of battery life that I don't know. I don't even know how much it would save. It doesn't even tell you how much it saves, but like, I get it. And I do know that it is, at least they kind of position it as, hey, we're not going to sell you out like the guys at Google, right? Like
Well,
that's their
I love
position on
the
that.
fact that you brought up, the idea of changing your account name, which was a really smart thing to do. It reminds me
Hey, I
of
did this for science,
I
It's
love it.
scientific.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it kind of speaks to, another thing that I think really gets lost in this conversation is none of this is new. The technology is new, but I had a high school teacher, and spoiler alert, I went to high school before the internet existed. Um, I had a high school teacher who used to, when he would sign up for things, he would slightly, let's sign up for a magazine subscription or a catalog or something. He would
Yep.
change something slightly about his name or slightly misspell his street or address or something like that. Because back then we were doing the same thing. Your information was still being sold.
Right.
Um,
Like a physical list broker.
Physical list was being
Yeah.
sold, and so
Yeah,
then
I know.
he could tell when he started getting this new stuff in the mail, he could be like, "Oh, the New Yorker sold my name," or "LL Bean sold my name," or whatever it is. So, that's another thing that I really want people to understand is we can break all this apart. We can destroy what
Yeah.
we've built so far online, but that's not gonna change the fact that your information is and always was sold. And by the way, that was personally identifiable information. They were selling your name and your street address and all of this. On
Yeah.
the
Yeah. That was
internet,
all of it.
none of that is being changed. As an advertiser, I mentioned this when we were talking about the Jets game. As an advertiser, I don't want to know your name. That is too much liability on my side. And then I have to worry about whether there's a data breach or a leak or any of that. I don't want that information. It's not helpful to me. I want my advertising to resonate with you, so I have an opportunity to build a first party relationship with you where you're willing to give me that information. But until that happens, I don't want it.
Well, I love this topic, as you know. I know you love this topic, and I think
Mm.
that we're going to bring in. So if you're listening and you want to you want to continue to see us discuss this and potentially even draw swords and argue about it, we're going to bring in some experts. I think that's the next step here is to dig into our Rolodexes. See that? I got, gonna pull out my Rolodex, my stack of I thought I had a stack of business cards here. I
For
wanted to
anyone under the
share
age
with
of
that.
40, Google that.
Yeah,
ROLOD.
yeah, like a real Rolodex. Um, we're gonna get some people. We're gonna put some of that stuff together, and we're gonna deep dive because, it's some. Look, I mean, I know we were we were talking about Alexa listening in, or, there's always that, is Google listening to me? Is Alexa listening to me? Is Siri listening to me? Apparently Siri isn't smart enough to listen to you, according to what, people at Apple or Apple fan people will tell you on, on the Reddit boards. And then obviously you have just flat out crazy conspiracy style stuff, right? That comes out of this, the government, whatever, that whole thing. And of course that's all very possible. Right. But I want to know, you're absolutely right. Like walking into that stadium, the liability for Ford or somebody like that, who's, helping the tier 3 automotive local Ford dealer in, Secaucus make you an offer on an F-150 would be just ridiculously lopsided, right? Like, I mean, a data breach of any type would make them completely culpable. And you'd probably easily be able to figure it out. So I just think that we should talk to those. And I'm actually incredibly interested in different rules around the world. I have recently kind of done a lot of business in Canada, and I've learned a lot more about Canada and obviously, at least not part of our country yet, and leaning potentially towards a union with the EU. Would they be into
Or
GDPR?
Greenland.
Because it sounds like to me that they're actually more strict than GDPR in some ways, particularly on the retail side. So I think that there's some fun stuff that we can discover there. And then lastly, and I think the big one, and this is the one that I think most people who are really thinking about it, just really putting your head on the medical information, the HIPAA compliance, right? And I think I have a few people who I'd like to bring onto the show. But what do you think, Egan, Professor Egan, on that bombshell? We cut today's show. We'll come back. We've got a change. We could potentially have a curveball. We got a new topic coming up, and then we'll come back to Google maybe right after that. How do we feel about that?
Love it.
Got the thumbs up. I just want to make sure I got the approval from the boss over
You got
here.
the approval. Let's do it.
All right. Let's do it. Till then, ciao, my friend. I will see you soon.
Bye. Always
Talk to you
great
later.
talking
Bye,
to you.
everybody. Yep. Bye.